with our Muslim and Jewish dialogue organized by the Islamic Society of Akron and Kent and Temple Israel. I am Art Krakauer, honored to partner with Dr. Saad Senura to moderate these sessions. As many of us know, these dialogue sessions have been held regularly for the last several years. They've become virtual in June of this year due to the current pandemic. We've tackled a whole range of topics in the past. Our topic tonight is religion and the pandemic. We'll hear from leaders of 4 congregations about the pandemic policy of each congregation, and we will hear from a recovering COVID patient. After that, we'll go into smaller groups to discuss prepared questions. We'd like to thank 2 medical doctors who created tonight's questions, Dr. Saad Senura and Dr. Ken Kretschmer. Thank you both. The questions are really among the best that we've had so far. I'd like to ask anybody attending today to enter their email address in the chat if you're not already on our email list. Also, video recordings of the last 3 sessions have been distributed. And if you did not see the links, please let Dr. Saad or me know. Now I'd like to invite Rabbi Brown to offer a prayer and a few comments.
Thank you, Art. It's great to see everybody and great to see that not only members of the synagogue and the mosque, but also some of our friends from friendly churches are also with us. So I know that for me, I'll just be brief, but for me, the moment that COVID became serious was early on back in March when I spoke with a friend who's a trauma doctor, and she described what was happening in the ER and in the hospital and all the anxiety and fear that was among the health professionals. And I know that among each of our faith traditions, we often take great pride, rightfully so, in how many of our, how deeply our tradition cares about health and how many of our people make that their profession. And we often take great pride in the doctors and nurses and health aides and all the people who help people to be healthy. It's a religious pride that we take. So I thought the prayer I would offer this evening is a prayer for all of those who are in there doing the work every day, day in and day out, who are helping to keep those that we love safe and often putting themselves at risk in order to do so. May the one who blessed and led our forebears give countenance unto those who provide help for all the ill and troubled among us. May they be filled with fortitude and courage, endowed with sympathy and compassion as they give strength to those at their side. May they fight against despair and continue to find within themselves the will to reach out to those in need. And in their love of others, may they feel the blessing of community and the blessing of renewed faith. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Linda Barr is a vice president of Temple Israel. She's a strong advocate for social justice. She played a major role in the formation of Temple Israel's COVID policy. And I'd like to ask Linda to explain Temple Israel's COVID policy and how it evolved. Linda.
Thank you, Art. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be able to join all of you tonight. I wish our topic was a little more uplifting, but nonetheless, we persevere. I did not create this plan on my own. I had a partner in this, Melissa Padorodecki, and more importantly, I had a lot of partners in terms of our exec board and in terms of our board of trustees. So what our guiding principle was when we started this plan back in March, and it's a 12-page document, the guiding principle was a Judaic principle of Pekuach Nefesh, which is basically the act or the idea of we should always act towards preserving life. And that has been so very, very important to us as we've proceeded through with this pandemic plan. We also said that we were going to be guided by the CDC, the Summit County and surrounding counties boards of health. We were going to be guided by the NIH, leading epidemiologists. What we were not going to be guided by was politics. Politics had absolutely no role one direction or the other in terms of our plan. So we went to a lot of resources online. We went to a lot of congregations and tried to talk to them as to what they were doing. But of course, everyone was playing catch up back in March. Everyone was making these plans. And what we needed to do was obviously get some type of plan in place. And we came up with 6 phases, so to speak. There was activation, 3 activation phases where we were basically shutting down in 3 different phases. And then we had 3 reopening phases where we were essentially reopening in 3 phases. Now we went to activation phase 3 immediately back in March because everything was shutting down and we felt we needed to shut down too. So we didn't really even get to kick the tires of activation 1 and 2. We went immediately to 3. Right now we're in reopening phase 1 and we've never gotten out of that. What reopening phase 1 has meant to us is basically nothing in person. Our staff right now is working a combination or hybrid of remotely and also the office. Recently, we have actually even limited, given the numbers, and I don't know how familiar you are with the numbers in Summit County, but I look at them twice a day. And the number, we broke another record on Monday with 248. Cases. And so we're averaging 183 cases per 7-day period now in Summit County, which is astronomical even compared to where we were back in March to June. So we are not having any in-person services. We are not doing anything relative to having meetings or any type of gatherings inside. For a while, we called it, I think it was reopening phase 1B, only because we were trying to find ways to keep our congregation engaged. I'm sure everyone understands, no matter what their faith, that has been a significant problem as we have gone along of trying to keep people engaged with their faith, with their faith community. And so that has been difficult. We had parking lot services, we could have meetings on the patio, things of that nature. But when Summit County recently went to the numbers that they've gone to, and obviously the cold weather has played a factor in that, we're now down to no in-person meetings. In fact, myself and most of the exec board, other than our 2 co-presidents, our treasurer, are actually banned from the temple. I had a little plan to use the temple library as a personal reading room over the winter just to get out of my house, and Rabbi thwarted that pretty quickly. But it's the right thing. It really is the right thing to do. And we really have not, I have to say, we have not had pushback to any extent relative to this plan. We've tried to be very open and honest with our congregation as to where the plan was. And we've made it very clear that, masks and things like self-monitoring and cleaning yourself in and cleaning yourself out of the area that when you were in the temple, things of that nature are very, very important. The basics, as they say. So that has been extremely important. We have a gift shop that's closed. It's the only Judaic gift shop in the area, and it is closed. Our kitchen is closed, and you haven't lived until you've told Sisterhood that they can't go into the kitchen. So that has been, difficult for that's the way Sisterhood communicates with one another. They're in the kitchen and they do a lot of other things, but the kitchen is a big part of that. So that is really where we are. I've learned a lot of things about, how air flows through a building. I was on the phone with our heating and cooling company, and they were explaining to me where the air ducts were. And we actually had them come in and point it out because we were going to be having singers in there for the High Holy Days. And we wanted to make sure that we were positioning them, even though it was just them in the synagogue and it was all being done recorded. We wanted to make sure we were positioning them in such a way that if they had COVID and we didn't realize it, or they didn't realize it, it wasn't going to be a function of it going up into ductwork and coming down on somebody else. We've looked at different filtration systems. We've opened up our vents on our computer, on our HVAC system through the computer. We've opened up our vents wider in terms of that to get more air flowing in there. And like I said, I've learned things that I never ever thought I would be learning in terms of something like COVID and something like a pandemic. We've also had to research things like when we reopen the synagogue, we have an ice machine. I mean, that's just such a simple little thing, but that ice machine has to be totally cleaned out. The faucets are going to have to be run and cleaned and things of that nature so we can avoid Legionnaire's disease. We don't want to go from COVID-19 to Legionnaire's disease in the synagogue, certainly. So those are all of the things that we have been doing and acting upon and trying to keep on top of and trying to adjust the plan. It's not a static document, but it is very much based on CDC guidance, and CDC guidance has changed. I mean, the last change that just came out is basically saying that, you know, masks always were to prevent or try to reduce the risk, I should say, of COVID for someone else. But now they're saying it's also for you too. It goes both directions. So CDC guidance has changed. We've tried to stay on top of that. We've tried to stay very much away from the politics of it all and really just go towards the science and try to stay on top of the science. Does that address what you wanted me to address, Art?
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you. I think Dr. Saad will be introducing the next speaker.
Yes. Good evening. Peace to all, and thank you for joining, everyone. Our next speaker is Dr. Musa Al-Hallaq. He is a rheumatologist in private practice in the Akron area. He is a member of the ISAC COVID task force in charge of devising policies aimed at securing the safety of ISAC members during the pandemic. Dr. Hallaq, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk tonight. My name is Musa, and I'm going to explain how COVID-19 affected the Muslim community in Akron and what we did about it. As you all know, COVID-19 came as a surprise for us. Although it caused symptoms similar to cold and flu, it is more infectious than the cold and the flu. It affected the old and the young, the healthy, the ill, and it took some people's lives as well. When COVID-19 came to the public attention in the US around February, we saw the cases rising very quickly. Soon, we will start hearing that people are admitted to the hospital because of COVID-19. And from there, they were going to the ICU. And some people in the ICU lost their lives from this virus. At that time, there was little information available to us, and there is no unified public message coming from the officials. So ISAC was monitoring the situation in the US and around our area, and they decided that it is safer to close all services until more information is available to us. ISAC provides a range of activities to the community in the area, including the daily prayer, the Friday prayer, some educational activities, counseling, funerals, sporting, community gathering, and many others. So from March until the next 2 to 3 months, all these services were suspended. While we have some flexibility attending the daily prayers in the mosque, Friday prayers are it's a little bit different because they are obligatory. People usually, they leave their work and they come to the masjid, the mosque, and they pray there. Many will take this opportunity to socialize and see their friends. Some people may skip Friday prayer from time to time, but we are not used to suspend Friday services for months. And I never seen the Friday prayer being suspended for months all over the world. So that was a little bit challenging to us and our faith. While we had the masjid and the mosque closed, we had Ramadan. Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. During the month of Ramadan, we refrain from eating and drinking, starting from the sunrise to the sunset. While this part was not affected by COVID-19, during Ramadan, ISAC provide other services to the community. They provide iftar, dinner to the community, and they arrange for Taraweeh prayer, where the Imam will read the whole Quran, and all these activities were suspended for these 2 or 3 months. So during the closure months, the Muslims in Akron and surrounding area, they lost many services and activity. Fortunately, as the weather was getting warmer, the curve in Ohio was flattening. And we start having some reports from areas that outdoor activities are less riskier than indoor activities. And Isaac decided to resume the most important activities and services, which are the Friday prayers and the daily prayers in the open space. During these services, we kept a minimum distance of 6 feet. We asked people to wear masks, to bring their prayer rags, and to avoid contact, like handshaking and hugs. We also ask anyone who's ill and have cold-like symptoms to avoid coming to the gathering. Fortunately, the community response during that time was great, and we continue to do this all summer long. So we were open, but we were open outdoor. And fortunately, the nice weather in Ohio during the summer helped us to do so. However, as the weather was getting colder, COVID-19 was hanging around us for a while, and we saw spikes during different parts of the United States. And we learned what works and what doesn't work, and how we can stop spreading the virus. So when the weather was getting colder, we decided to move inside. But at this time, we increased the distance between congregants from 6 to 8 and 10 feet. We kept the face mask mandate, and we kept the no touch mandate as well. We checked the temperature for each person coming inside the facilities. Inside the facilities, we had the air running all the time, and we had the fans running all the time. We kept the doors open so that there will be a flow between different parts of the facilities. During the services, we also have volunteers that will walk between the congregants to make sure they keep space and they have the face mask used correctly. To my knowledge, using all these activities, we did not have any COVID-19 transmission inside the facility.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Allah. And now back to Art for.
Yes. Thank you. Renee Romine is an active member of New Hope. She's a key leader in the interfaith activities and also a leader in interfaith social justice. Renee, can you please explain what's happening at New Hope Baptist Church?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you, Art. So a little bit about what's going on at New Hope. Excuse my background. I'm still at work at Kent State. Sorry about that. We have been closed since February, and just learning information, trying to figure out what we were going to do. We finally, last month, got a letter from our leadership explaining that we will not be back in the service. Everything will remain virtually until next year, until we find out further information. But since the COVID-19 has severely impacted the African-American community, so it was a decision made not to open the church back. And that, like I said, that's been since March, actually. What we're doing now, we have limited staff that goes in. Our secretary, she does some of the bookkeeping function. And then we have a staff that goes in and record our Sunday service. We have a recorded Bible study, which is on Wednesday. And then we also have text messages that we get from our pastor. It's prayers. So we get those. And then we have a motivational message that our women's group send out every Monday. So we've had drive-through celebrations because we celebrate our pastor's 13th year. We celebrated his graduation, he got his doctorate, but we've had drive-through things like for food and for different things, the different service things, but nothing inside of the church. And like I said, that decision was made since we knew, I mean, we were closed since March, but we got a letter, official letter with all of the information last month that we will not be going back in the entire year. And then we'll just have to figure out what's going on for next year. So that's basically, you know, where we are. We'll look at how things are going with the virus next year to figure out our status. But right now we have, like I said, we have been closed since March and we have not been back in the church. Just only key figures to record different things for our different services. So that's where we are at New Hope.
Thank you, Renee.
Mhm.
And back to Dr. Saad.
Yes. Next, our next speaker is Reverend Dr. Peter Wiley. He relayed to me that he is simply blessed to be here and to have a growing relationship with the people of Akron Interfaith Community. He has been the senior pastor for First Congressional Church of Hudson since 2005, formerly served in Connecticut. He has a master's degree from Yale and a doctorate from Hartford. Without further ado, Reverend Dr. Wiley, please.
Good evening. First, it's a blessing for me to finally be able to share with this group. I know I've had people from my congregation who have participated in some of your gatherings, and this has been my first chance. So I feel very fortunate to be able to be with you. Related to how our congregation has responded to COVID-19, like so many other faith communities, it started March 15th for us, was our first day of shutting down. This will be our 36th week of being fully virtual. The transition was actually pretty easy for us. We've done virtual church always, not always, for almost 10 years now. So it was simply just a transfer over and then working at making it so that it's more and more relevant to be online instead of in person. It's also been easier for us than a lot of other churches, at least, that we're not necessarily a sacramental church, but more of a communal church. And it's not essential that people are in the space for any of our activities. And we can really do most of the things that we would normally do in faith online and doing it virtually, and have found 4 different platforms that we do that on. We early on did try to stay connected, again, as a more communal congregation, by finding those connections where we've got multiple setups where everybody in the congregation is repeatedly getting contacted, is being checked up on, that about every 2 or 3 months, we're actually sending deliveries to every home in the congregation of something related to the season that we're in. One of the things that also happened to us is we shut down everything, like most places, in March. But the first thing that we had that reopened is we've got a significant preschool and daycare. And as preschool, well, especially as daycares began reopening, trying to make it possible for medical professionals and other essential services to have care for their children, we had to immediately try to implement those practices. So we actually built space outside where there are now outdoor hand washing stations indoors, and then once they get to the classrooms. There are temperature checks, there's tented areas, there's sign-ins. So we've got lots of pieces in place for that. And that's been our biggest guide as we've begun discussing how do we consider ever getting back more fully to in-person. We have not had any regular in-person in the building services since March. We've had some very small funerals, very small weddings, and we've begun doing some work on the plans of how we will reopen. That involves, we have one of our, the physicians in our congregation who spent much of his time working with COVID patients, and a health director within the church also, who has helped guide us in the steps that we're taking. And what I've attempted to do and encourage is that we want to be 6+1. And by that, what we've tried to do is say, whatever the communal practices for our general community are, we want to take it at least a step further. A challenge that we've had here in Hudson is almost every church has returned months ago. So there is some pressure to be back. And the schools are fully back, except for the high school that's half and half. So there certainly has been the pressure to come back. We've continued to avoid it. We're at the point now that we're talking that the earliest we would consider it is sometime mid-January. And again, the likelihood of that I think is extraordinarily slim. But by having some very small funerals and very small weddings, we have developed those practices of how there is not contact person to person, how there are those practices like the others have related, where we ensure best practices to limit risk as greatly as possible. For me, the most essential part about it is, like the others, is we want to be as protective as possible of the population that comes here. We want to be as much of a partner in communal effort to limit the spread of COVID, at the same time, being aware of what's happening in broader community. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, is the pressure when there is broader community that has, at least in our community, has begun interacting at a very large extent. We've still been able to resist it, but I have to confess, it's been a challenge. It's becoming easier now, sadly, simply because of the rise in cases, and those who have been pushing for it. It's easier to help them understand that this is not a good time to go back into full person. We also have done the outdoor parking lot services with separation, with masking, without singing, again, to try to have best possible practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One last piece that I'd throw in. As we prepare, we also, like others, looking into the different air handling systems, we're now in the process of installing a bipolar ionization system, which at first to me sounded like mad science. Until we did some research and saw the different universities, the different hospitals, places that have done so, and at least along with as much ventilation, open windows, certainly is yet another risk reducer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Wiley. It seems to me, with all four of the congregations who have been explaining their policies tonight, if any of us are going to err, we're going to err on the side of being cautious. And that's probably not a bad thing. Next, Kathy Ress is the president of the Akron Area Interfaith Council. She's a social worker. She's an advocate for the immigrant community in Akron. And she's a recovering COVID patient. Kathy has honored us by agreeing to give us a little bit of advice tonight. Kathy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Art. This isn't easy. I just want you to know I wasn't going to any bars. I wasn't partying, and I did wear my mask. And I have a few ideas where I may have contracted this. Mostly one place in a small office where I took an immigrant to a lawyer's office, and another place where I did transport an immigrant, but he had his mask on, so did I. Had my windows open and going down 77. However, we just don't know. I'm speaking mostly to you because I think our medical system it's getting slammed. And when I went through this, my doctor just pretty much said, and I love my doctor, there's nothing we can do. And being the tough person that I thought I was, I said, okay, I'll just buck it up and do what I have to do to get through this. But there was no paper given to me with best practices. There was no, she just said call. So I got pretty sick, and I do live by myself. But the good part is that I've belonged for years to what's called the Wilderness Community, which is through Catholic faith. And there's a physician in the community who rose to the occasion and helped me check my oxygen level, because that's the scary thing. You have to have a oximeter, and most people don't even know what that is. Again, it's like a truck hitting you, or a freight train coming through. And I wasn't prepared, and I really didn't think I even had it. Somebody had to really say, you need to go get checked, because all I had, as the doctor said before, was symptoms of cold, and I thought it was an allergy. However, then it began to go into, I was not hospitalized, but it goes into a real fog. You're really like feeling like you're underwater. And if you've ever had altitude sickness, for me at any rate, it was like having altitude sickness, because you can't move very much. You're really stuck. You feel like you have the flu and you can't eat. But the hardest part for me was kind of this frozen quality that I was getting. You know, I could still talk, but it was hard to walk. So with constant monitoring from Dr. Joe and suggestions to take vitamins and a baby aspirin, which apparently is supposed to help if you should go into respiratory distress. People who apparently take baby aspirin have a better chance on the ventilator. So just hearing that made me feel really a lot better. So we got that, and the vitamin D and the vitamin C and the E, or the zinc. And so the main thing was managing my fear and my symptoms at home. And my levels, oxygen levels, did go to 92 and 91. And that's basically when I toughed it out. That happened mostly in the mornings. That happened more as I got more deeply into, I think, the third stage of the illness. Apparently there's stages of this illness, which I didn't really know about till afterwards, and it's probably just as well. I think what kept me going was my community around me. People dropped food at my front, people dropped food at my back door, and I got funny, humorous texts and calls, and that helped me through some of the stimulation through it. I had no motivation at all, and pretty much sat in this blue chair, which I'm going to burn, I think, for 2 weeks. So it's been about almost 3 weeks now, and I'm having symptoms of tiredness still. I'm at 75%, not totally like I was yet, and I'm mad about that. I'm not a good person to suffer, but I've never been sick. So I would just say to you, as faith leaders, to please check on your congregants if they have it. You might be in denial that you have it, and really lean on them to get tested, and really talk with them so that they keep them talking, and get them a connection with their doctor. Because my doctor did not offer to, she said I could call her, but the office didn't offer to do some check-ins with me. And as I look back, I think, ooh, that wasn't good. There needed to be some way to get into my home via, I have a computer that wasn't offered to see my face, to see if my lips were blue. Nobody saw me, and I really haven't seen anybody yet, other than through my door. I would really ask you to press people to get a connection with their doctor, and not be so nice about that. Be tougher. I was way too nice. I should have said, no, you need to really be checking on me. And I didn't feel good enough to do that. And also I didn't realize what was coming. And then when you're into the fog, it's very easy just to sit there. So I guess I'm more on the passive side. However, as I came out of it, I got really mad. So that's basically it. Just please hang on to your people and get them treatment before it gets better. I'm lucky, other people are not. And if they had something like COVID clinics, I don't think I needed hospitalized, but I think I needed the drug that the president had, the resmetisphere, I can't say it. At the end of this whole saga, I really was ready to call 911. I felt so sick, but I got through it and didn't need it. But if there were just a way, I don't know how you administer that, but if there would be an in between going to a hospital and sitting at home, I would take that middle ground. So, so that's the news from my blue chair. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much.
Kathy, I didn't even know you were sick. Sorry.
You probably haven't seen me in a while.
Thank you, Kathy, and we are grateful for your full recovery and sharing your story with us too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next, and technology allowing, we are going to be divided into 5 subgroups to tackle questions relevant to the topic of this evening. I would like to thank Dr. Kretschmer for his wisdom and being instrumental in formulating those questions. Each subgroup will be assigned one of these questions for discussion. If time permits, any subgroup could discuss more than one question. There are no right or wrong answers. At the end of the time allotted, each subgroup assigns a representative to summarize the answers to the whole group. The questions are now posted on the screen. I hope everybody can see them. At the end of the presentations, if there are any questions to the speakers who presented the COVID measures taken by their respective place of worship, please feel free to send a question via Zoom to Art or to me. We may address those questions in 5 to 10 minutes if needed. Now, I think we are ready to do the breakout sessions now, whenever Brother Fahim can help us with that, to be divided into, I think, 5 groups.
Answer of these questions. For the first question, yes, the government, we believe from the Jewish perspective, religious perspective, and the Islamic ruling, we believe that the government has a right to stop religious activities in a pandemic time. And the justification is in the Islamic ruling, which matches the justification in the Jewish ruling, is that the government has the right and the duty to secure and to make sure that the citizens are safe. So if gatherings will cause disease and cause death in the community, the government has the right to stop the gathering. But it's also it's the government duty to make sure that the citizens are secure and are safe. Dave shared some of the general Jewish ruling, and I shared some of the Islamic rulings that states that no harm and that safety and security comes first. and that the government need to do whatever possible to assure the safety and security of its citizens. The second part of the question was what role? Let me read it. I have it in my phone.
Yeah,
what is the role?
How many personal liberties are worth sacrificing to be safe?
Yeah, I think we elaborated more on the last question, which is, or the last part of the first question, which is what is the role of the government in your healthcare? And we believe that I think we agreed that we see healthcare as a right, not a privilege, and the government should secure the safety of its citizens, and also should secure healthcare for all and each and every citizen, which is something missed in the United States. We used what Bernie Sanders said, his quote, that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And we believe that. That's it.
That's too far left, Brother Farid.
Say it again.
That's considered too far left.
Too far left, yeah. It's. I think we elaborated it. It's if you consider Canada, Germany, France, and Great Britain are far left, then yeah, it's left.
We'll go to question number 2. And I believe I was in that group, and Marty volunteered to, report on that question. How do the changes in places of worship impact your spirituality?
Okay, let me sort of this. I've made 5 different categories. I am a lawyer. I do things in lists, so please excuse that. And the first was everybody sort of agreed that both Islam and Judaism are congregational in nature. That some of the things we do as part of our tradition, as part of our ritual, we do in congregations. And so by definition, not having a congregation is going to affect those things and affect, for some, not for all, spirituality. The reason I say for some, I'll get to in a few seconds when I talk about that. Second, that there is, when you combine the issue of spirituality and life cycle events, is when it becomes even more difficult. Some things we were pointing out you can defer, like a birthday party or even a bar mitzvah. But things like death, things like a grandchild being born and you want to be there with the mother, you can't defer that. You just can't, because you have a situation. It's hard to do things in a distance when a parent dies, for example, and you have aunts and grandchildren, et cetera. It does affect that nature of sort of what that is and how that sort of happens. We have a counterpoint of view, which was that for some people, the idea of having a Zoom service was good. They could relax, they could have a glass of wine, they could walk around. And for some people who had not been seeing other people at all during the week, at least you had that feeling of unity, that period of time that you're part of a larger group when you had that service, even if it was Zoom. And others said that it might have affected ritual. Specifically, it might, there's some of the rituals you would miss, whether it's services or whether it's life cycle events. But your spirituality is your spirituality. You can do things at home because of your spirituality, which carries you along. Whether that would last for a year, 2 years, 4 years, or 5 years, sort of no one can sort of handle that. Fourth was the issue of special kinds of holidays, whether it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in our tradition or Ramadan in the Muslim tradition. And I guess obviously for the other situation, for other kinds of celebrations. Those are rituals, but they have a ritual that really is part of the congregational. For Ramadan, one of the issues that was raised by a number of individuals was the idea of sort of the ability to get together and do things in unison, to break the end of the day and to sort of do other situations in certain periodic scenarios like that. And the high holidays as well, for our tradition, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, It's an opportunity to meet people, talk about the past. And there's even a part of the service which celebrates people who have passed away. And even though it's only a ritual, it does cross over into the idea of spirituality. And the general comment, my fifth point, is that Zoom is better than nothing. It is better than nothing. And again, a number of people said, it was okay, I live with that. It was better than nothing. And I have to sort of add an anecdote here. Could you just imagine what it would be like if the last pandemic, which was in the teens of the 20th century, with no phone, no radio, no Zoom, nothing, how different that experience must have been. So Zoom is better than nothing, but it's still something, and it's maybe not as good, but we should be happy that at least we have Zoom.
Thank you very much, Marty. Next, we'll tackle the third question. When is science more important than faith? Do you have faith in science? Do you trust the medical system to do what is right for you?
Right, I will address this question.
I'll ask
So we're
the
from
representative of Group 3 to share their conclusion.
Right, thank you, Dr. Saad. We had a great discussion. We actually went further and we discussed questions 4 and 5. But since we were assigned question 3, I'm going to share with you the summary of what we have discussed. So first, in regard to the first part of the question, when is science more important than faith? We first asked, is science more important than faith in the first place? And we came to a consensus where we believe that faith and science, they're not two different entities, but they complement each other. And that they are two different types of knowledge. Faith is coming directly from God, while science is coming indirectly from God. That God is using people to introduce and to create science. Also, we discussed that the nature of faith does not change over time, while science changes over time depending on the situation. The way people practice their religion, their faith changes over time, but its nature as a faith does not change. Peter also shared a very important point that people, they are more universal in science, but when we talk about faith traditions, we talk about the commonalities. So through the universality of science, people find their common grounds and commonality in their faith traditions. So going back to the question, when is science more important than faith? As we said, so we believe that this question should not be one way or the other, but it is a matter of the two of them putting hand and staying hand in hand. And which comes to, more clear in the second part of the question that says, do you have faith in science? Because in order to believe in science, then people have faith in science. Do you trust the medical system to do what is right for you? And I shared with them a story in Libya that occurred in 1998 when 6 foreign medical workers, they used, as we have heard about, a flu vaccine, while actually it was an HIV illness that was injected in over 400 children, where 56 of them passed away in August 2007. This story was mysterious, but it was most likely the government that caused that to happen. And since then, people started not to trust any vaccine, especially by doctors whom they don't know, and doctors who are not known in the area. So that was one example where some people don't trust the medical system because of politics and things like that will make people stay away from it. Yeah, so that was our share. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Sekta. The fourth question, will you take the COVID vaccine? Why are so many people afraid?
Okay, so Renee Romine again, I am representing the fourth group. So our group, actually, we had a split about 50-50 as far as taking the COVID vaccine, and for different reasons. So did you want me to go ahead to the second one?
Yes. Why are so many people afraid? Yes.
Okay, so we had some excellent discussion actually around it. And we had some strong ideas for the yes, and then some strong for the no. So for the yes, one person said they seem more confident and knowledgeable about vaccines because they have a family member that have worked with vaccines previously. So we heard a lot more confident and more knowledge there. That person said she probably definitely would if she was given the opportunity. And then we had some kind of in the middle where we talked about, is the risk of taking the vaccine less than the side effects from the virus? Because there have been said that people have had lung damage and mental health issues, people that have contracted the virus. And then we also said we're not going to necessarily know what the side effects are going to be from the vaccine, short or long term, because normally it takes a long time. Someone said in the group about 7 years, even sometimes, to test the vaccine. So we're not going to necessarily know what those are with, everything moving along really quickly. On the strong no, we talked about historically African Americans have been subjects to test vaccines. And then also because African American are severely impacted, it may be a push to get them to take the vaccine. And so I don't think people are going to necessarily want to because some of the historical things that have happened. So that was the discussion in our group. We had rich discussion, a lot of good discussion.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Renee.
You're welcome.
The next step is, what steps do we need to accomplish to make the best out of the pandemic? How can we strike a balance between public safety and economic prosperity?
I don't think we in group 5 assigned anybody to speak, so I'll mention a few things and then I have to leave for another Zoom call. We didn't address the first part at all because it's going to play out the way it is playing out, but the science is going to dictate treatments, and we must get behind the COVID before the economy will start behaving in a more normalized approach. And with that, I'm going to bid everybody adieu and have a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Are there any questions to the ones that presented earlier? Anybody has any pressing questions about the measures taken to secure and the safety of our congregants?
So I was going to say that the question number 4, whether or not people should take the vaccine. The number of cases that have already had the vaccine is, I think it's about 48,000 or more. And the side effects are very small, and that is fever and fatigue, only 2. And the vaccines that have been given for centuries now. And some of them are flu vaccines, which we take them regularly. It's a similar vaccine. It's an antiviral vaccine, and the risk is much smaller compared to, if there was no, pandemic, then there's no reason to take anything, not even zero risk. But because the pandemic is such a dreadful disease in those that it affects or kills, I think we should encourage from these religious faith communities that if it is allowed to come, now that there is no political pressure, I think we should trust the science and the physicians and the scientists that are working on it. I think we should encourage, that should be our responsibility in our communities to promote and encourage to take vaccine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mir.
I have a concern. I have a
Yes.
concern. Okay. Actually, two concerns.
Yes,
One,
Dr. Ha.
now that the weather is going to turn cold in December, January, February, how do we look forward to continuing the in-person services? Because you're not going to be able to ventilate as you were able to do the past few months. So what are the contingencies that our different faith services are developing? Number two, do we have a program within our communities to reach out to those COVID patients that are recovering or that are dealing with it at home? Should we come up with a structured reach out program in each our community and encourage people, our members, to one, communicate with the office, two, to have a buddy system in which we do the welfare checks on those patients that are dealing with it at home, and should that be a plan that these communities develop. And the third thing I would echo what Dr. Mir just said, that God has given us these bodies. It has also given us the responsibility to take care of these bodies, because these bodies don't belong to us. They are on lease to us, in our possession for our use. And when we are using these bodies, we need to take care of them to the best of our ability. And if a vaccine is available that helps us take care of this body, in my understanding, it is my obligation to take care of this body. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ha.
I might suggest question 2 from that list would be one that perhaps Kathy Ress might want to answer.
I'm all for the buddy system. I think that people don't realize what's hitting them because it hits so fast. The main way is, how do you find out who in your congregation has it? But to encourage them to call might be great, because you really do need you're so isolated. And people are, at least for me, when they come to your front door and your back door, but nobody's seeing you. And I know you can't come in, but you could help get the person connected with their doctor to do a Zoom call or something. Or you could do a Zoom call just to see the person, because you're so isolated. I mean, I did fine, but you really, by yourself. So I would suggest that, yes. People don't have doctors, and doctors I don't think doctors, I'm not dissing on you doctors. I think most of you are wonderful, but maybe there needs to be specialists that know what they're doing. I think my friend, the doctor, researched it more and knew more than my doctor, actually. I could be wrong about that. But there needs to be something better in the medical field right now. Ooh, sorry to say that.
Yeah, Kathy, I would agree with you entirely. something to remember though, this is all new for the doctors too. So we're learning about this disease, learning about dealing with video visits with patients. This is a new experience for us too. So we're learning as well. And I would echo, I really like the idea of the Dr. Hawk raised of having a buddy system that should be arranged. And we don't have to wait till somebody gets sick. I think there should be a buddy system arranged for anybody that lives alone and anybody that, and even some of the more the older members of the congregation that may not, even though they have a spouse with them, or somebody, who may not be, fully capable of handling all the thought processes and understanding, when and where to seek help when they need it. So I think that's an excellent idea. And then the last point I make, I just make is I'm, fully in favor of vaccinating and encouraging people to be vaccinated. Although the newest vaccine, is a unique vaccine. The mechanism of action is different than any other vaccine that they've had. It's a messenger RNA vaccine rather than a live or killed virus or a protein vaccine. So it's it's a little bit, there's a little bit of an unknown there. But my personal feeling is I'm going to trust the scientists and the FDA to approve that vaccine until it's fully vetted.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Now we'll have we were originally slated to have a concluding prayer from Dr. Farid Fouad, but he is also as far away as Imam Sekta. He's in San Francisco, it looks like, from the picture. So we'll ask Imam Sekta to give us the concluding remarks. Are you still Imam Sekta there? Okay. Yes. You probably could unmute yourself, Imam Sekta. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I want to share with you some verses from the Holy Quran that talks about shifa, which is often translated as cure or medication. So verses from 3 different chapters. And one of them is the story of Prophet Abraham when he came to his people advising them not to worship idols. And when they rejected, then he closed his advice with a prayer. So we'll start with 2 different verses, and then I will close with Prophet Abraham's prayer. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. O people, there has come to you an advice from your Lord and a cure for the hearts and a guidance and mercy for the believers. And here God is referring to the Holy Quran as a cure for the believers. The next verse in Surah Al-Isra, in chapter called Al-Isra. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. Here God is talking about what is in the Quran is a medication. So he said, we have sent down in the Quran that which is a cure and a mercy for the believers. So the last one, it talks about the story of Prophet Abraham. It's a beautiful prayer. And it starts with, الذي خلقني فهو يهدين. It says, the one who created me, it is he who will guide me. والذي هو يطعمني ويسقين. And it is he who will give me food and drink. وإذا مرضت فهو يشفين. And when I fall ill, it is he who will heal me. والذي يميتني ثم يحيين. And it is he who will cause me to die, and it is he who will then resurrect me. والذي أطمع أن يغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين. And it is he who, upon whom I pin my hopes, will forgive me my mistakes on the day of judgment. رب هب لي حكما رب هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين. My Lord, bless me with your wisdom and join me with those who deserve your proximity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imam Sekta. Thank you all for joining this evening. Our next session will most probably be in January. Topic and exact date will be shared with the group. Sessions will continue to be virtual till further notice. Thank you again, and peace to all, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.